You're listening to Pardon the Disruption with your host, Tom Young.
All right, hey guys, thanks. Welcome to the show here. We're sitting outside. Let's go around the porch.
The porch.
Yes.
This is
Love
TJ
it.
Young.
This is Bart Gallo.
And this is Rohan Kapoor.
Great. Hey, we're doing this show outside because it's a beautiful Chamber of Commerce day.
Yes, we learned what that was today, by the way.
I
did
explain for the many people listening who have no idea what that is.
101% of the audience that doesn't know what that is.
I think it's just you millennials don't know. It's Chamber of Commerce is a beautiful day.
You're right. That is what it is. It's an Instagram day. That's
nice,
it. You nailed
nice.
it.
The Chamber of Commerce is the day that the Chamber of Commerce takes pictures because it's so nice out. And today it's beautiful outside. We got a little bit of breeze here, so we'll get some maybe some breeze noises. And there's some guy who's mowing the lawn over there trying to earn a living. We told him to shut the hell up because we're recording, but he didn't care.
This is more important.
Anyway, so today we wanted to talk about some interesting stuff around the convergence of a few things. I'll just introduce the two topics. One is speech to face and DNA to face. And when we first talked about this yesterday, and you guys are about as attuned as you possibly can get to advancing technologies, even you guys were like, no way, right?
And it's a play on words on text-to-speech and speech-to-text technology, right? And have the way that like Alexa works and the way that like Dragon voice software works. But you said face-to-speech or speech-to-face.
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 So think about this. Here's what's happening. They can take a voice recording, and then from that voice recording, generate what you look like using AI. Now, underneath what they're doing, is AI. I'm saying in a broad umbrella term, there's a lot of interesting, cool technologies there. But it's amazing. And if you look at some of the pictures, and Bart, you can pull them up on Teams, and so we can display that, and then we can put this into the recording so people can see what we're looking at. But it's unbelievable because it's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
And it's only going to get better.
It's only getting better.
It's not like it's not like it's steady now. It will keep improving.
I think you said it was like slightly better than a police sketch as a comparison people can understand yesterday.
Yeah.
I think that's a good representation of what you're looking at.
Yeah. So in the articles that we sent, there was a paper that was published in MIT where I saw it, and I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
What's happening? And the technology I want to talk to, and then we'll go through each one, is DNA to face.
Yeah.
This one I still don't believe.
So, and I saw this article actually first, which made me attuned to this whole speech to face thing, which was this artist was taking old cigarette butts, harvesting the DNA from them, and generating faces from the DNA.
I think that's the thing. It's obviously that's crazy in itself, but the accessibility of someone who is an artist to be able to actually biohack that as well is kind of insane.
And the use case there, well, the application was an art installation. And where was that?
She was 3D printing models of the faces of cigarette butts she had found.
And that's in a museum somewhere now?
She was collecting the samples on subways in New York, cigarette butts, gum.
And it's like lost faces of cigarettes or something like that.
Yeah, and she was recreating these faces on a level where she could tell you about the person's ethnicity, what region of the world they came from.
And presumably she tested it on herself as well to get an accurate.
Right.
But
it's crazy.
The woman's name that did this was Heather Dewey Hagberg, and she's based in Chicago. But just think about the forensics that go with this now.
Right.
DNA is left at a crime scene. Now I don't even need a police sketch anymore. I can run this test and see what they possibly look like. And we have some pictures that show how close this is to reality. It's damn impressive.
Some of them are really good. Some are not. But when you compare it to what we have now, which are these police sketches, which can be completely, off the ball. It's a huge improvement for them.
Straight out of Mission Impossible, isn't it? Where they take DNA, print the mask, slap it on.
Yeah. And what kind of sample do you need? I mean, it, not just a cigarette butt. It could be any remnant that you leave. I mean, honestly, I think the first one you brought up is more scary as this country or other countries adopt more of the CCTV kind of Big Brother installations where more areas are not just on video but mic'd up.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a crime happening, or even just monitoring certain keywords that are being said, they can immediately see that. And they're already doing that. I mean, NSA already admitted that they're listening to everybody. But if they see the keyword, now they can say, all right, well, this person who looks like this probably said it, and we can match that with pictures that we have from social media or from profiles.
Right. And we also have an overall risk profile for that person already, so we can start
Right.
to correlate how likely they are to commit certain crimes before they commit them, maybe?
I don't think that's far off.
No, I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
Bart, you sent out a note from this guy on Twitter, from Real Cantbot.
Yeah, he was one of those deep domain kind of, I think, savant types.
But
Best way to describe it.
He's this guy's one of those guys who's like I said, deep domain. He's probably a 4chaner, a non-type guy. He said some pretty provocative things around this. But when you take this technology and combine it with some of the things he was saying around the ability of the machine, in the broadest sense, to know about what we look like, where we are, our social history, our FICO score, our geolocation based on our smartphone, the fact that Alexa's listening to everything,
Right.
Siri, that there's not going to be any ability to hide.
Yeah, beyond that, I think he was also saying that when you consider all the data that the different Silicon Valley firms and different tech companies and government agencies are starting to collect on people, he's really getting to the notion that your entire existence is going to be able to be represented digitally, and there will be some other realm of existence in the future other than the one we exist in now.
Yeah. So you sent two tweets that he sent out. I'm just going to read them real quick.
Oh, you got him? Okay.
Yeah. So it said, human beings will have no rights in the future. Neural nets trained on every conversation you've ever had will become the basis of your digital citizenship in the hyper realm. You will be nothing more than this deep fake doppelganger, patrician servant, and go-between. Your Amazon Alexa will record every utterance you ever hear. They know every book you've ever bought. Google has all your correspondence. Apple has all your text messages. And a neural net trained in the combination of these sources will be indistinguishable from you. And that sounds dystopian in the extreme. And I'm not saying that I'm advocating. I'm just saying, like, when we see technologies like this, speech to face, it's hard to even think about it. Speech to face and DNA to face. This is really testing our boundaries of what we imagine is possible.
Yeah, well, I think what's scary about it is, so for example, he mentions they know every book you've ever bought. But what if I bought a physical book and I didn't read it? The digital recreation of me will be a better version of me that read every page of the book
That's
and
true.
can completely reproduce it. So it's almost like you'll be able to purchase the best version of yourself if you have any money at all to exist in this hyper realm.
You can almost fake it to make your hyper realm self a much better person.
Yeah,
To the point where it's actually not even you anymore.
Yeah, and
right?
those who are forced to live in the normal physical world are an underclass who can't buy the digital better existence that others have access to.
But the more you participate in just digital tech in general, like if you're going to adopt reading stuff on ebooks as opposed to buying a traditional book like you're from the 1400s, then they know your progress. So the more you participate, the more accurate and efficient your digital twin becomes. And I think that's just a general trend that's going upward.
Right.
Like my girlfriend refuses to use she uses it sometimes, but she still likes to hold the book. But that's going to die out. I mean, it's just old.
Well, yeah, vinyl. People still like.
It's a resurgence.
It's resurgence.
Yeah.
Coming through with those type of analog.
Well, there's
technology.
this Germany startup, I forget the name of it, where they take the books, the nonfiction books, and they distill them down, so you can basically read 5 books a day. Blinkist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Blinkist is one of those ones where they're using digital technologies to allow you to do what Bart you just said in the analog realm.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking the digital distillation of a book and allowing you to digest it very quickly. And instead of reading 4 books a year, which is the average, you could read 4 a week or 4 a day. And and be that better person. But if you're too lazy, then let the digital guy read the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what good are you?
Right.
Yeah.
The digital guy can read 4 books in 1 minute.
Does the analog realm just become a vacation? And you unplug?
You feel the haste, though. I mean,
Yeah.
as living in a 2019 person on Earth, I can't even watch a show and then not also read something on my phone without feeling like I'm not keeping up with the speed of information.
I can't even wait till I'm done watching to do that. As soon as I see something I like, I'll Google name of the show, cinematography, and go
4
down this
tabs
rabbit
going.
hole of
Yeah.
who contributed. And that's while the show's still playing, and I'm not paying attention
You get
to
antsy if you don't do that.
So if you watch Amazon Prime Video on a smart
they
TV,
have good information right there waiting for you.
the X-rays just scratching the surface. So typically what will happen is you'll say, who is that actor? Or who is that actress? And you want to pull them up and you can see all their... And what you do is you zip out and it goes to the X-ray mode and it says, here are the things you're probably looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And you click on them and then it gives you the quick bio. And then you go right back to the show.
Yep, so much better than pulling out your phone to go on IMDb while the show's still
Right.
playing. And yeah, that's nice.
So I used to, I would watch these shows like The Tudors, these historical docudramas, and I would have Wikipedia up, and I'd be reading about like who all these people were, so I had some background, and I wanted to see how historically accurate some of this stuff was. But also the show companions for complex shows like Game of Thrones, there's so many damn characters and so many interactions. Like, why did he with him? Why did she shoot her? And all that stuff. The digital overlay to these things are pretty cool. But back to our topic, you're starting to see this notion of forensics moving into a completely new realm.
And I'm trying to think beyond. So the forensics Big Brother police state thing is definitely one of the ones that pops into mind first because it's a little scary and it's already kind of happening in some capacities, especially in places like China. But I'm trying to think if they can do DNA to face now, can they do chromosomes and genome to face? So the whole aspect of CRISPR and designer babies, where we can say, hey, we're going to eliminate some genetic diseases that your child might have if you know you're going to pair with someone else. And then even beyond that, we can make them taller, faster, more blonde, something, whatever you want to do. Can you use this technology to say, hey, you guys are going to come and match, and you take eggs from the woman, sperm from the man, and say, here's what this combination will look like as well. It's like, oh, do you want this kid? Or do you want kid B? Here's 20 choices. Can that happen?
So we're studying, and we haven't done. We will do a show soon on the generative adversarial networks, and we're going to learn how they work. But there's some pretty interesting stuff around how these neural networks can be set up in cooperation and opposition to get some really interesting understandings. So imagine I take 23andMe or some genomic database, and that's one of the largest ones. I think that plus Ancestry. And I then marry it to my social media platforms. So now I can look at DNA and I can do the DNA to face, but then I can compare it to a reference that's actual. And I can start to train the DNA to face algorithms to be 98%, 99%, 100%.
And start to correlate it to behaviors as well.
And then I have the ability to say, I start to derive and reverse engineer the DNA to looks. And that's where you get into the designer babies,
Right.
where I could say, it's these genes or this combination of DNA that makes you look this way and not that way.
Yeah.
And when I tweak it through CRISPR-Cas9, I can change the way my child will look.
Yeah.
And if I'm dating somebody and they're on 23andMe, we can have an app that allows us to not just do the face mashups, which is one of the simple, smartphone apps that just takes 2 pictures and merges them together, but actually do it at the DNA level.
But like preemptively?
It changes Tinder completely.
Well, it's like that. What's that Icelandic app that they use? It's like a preemptive check.
Yeah.
Like, are we cousins?
Are we cousins?
Yeah.
But like, will our babies look amazing? Okay,
It's a serious
let's date.
concern. I wonder if there'll be trade-offs, if they'll be able to tell you, like, yeah, we can make this tweak and make the eyes as blue as possible, but this person has a 98% chance of being addicted to Instagram. There's just, we know that too because of social
Pros and
media
cons.
activities that are correlated with the DNA and the people we're tracking.
Suddenly there's nowhere left to hide, right? There's no second guessing anything.
It's exactly what Gattaca showed. If
Yeah.
you've seen that movie, you haven't seen it?
No.
Definitely watch it with Jude
I
Law way back in
haven't
the
seen
day.
that
You haven't seen
either.
Gattaca?
No.
It's pretty much. I won't give the whole thing away, but it's a future society where designer babies are the common method of producing somebody. So if you're not amazing in multiple fields, you cannot compete. So it's
Wow.
Ethan Hawke is not one of them. He tries to get into like a space program as an astronaut, but like he's running and like coughing up blood, and he can't like compete with these superhumans.
Basic human.
Who are yeah, so he's not they're basic and he's lesser.
He's like Rocky.
But the
Right.
ability to opt out here doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's the issue.
it was
so-
so spooky
No,
how
no.
the wind got loud.
Is there a storm coming?
We, I'm going to take back the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
I need to turn the wind down. If the special effects guys are still here, they can turn it down. No, but your ability to opt out, it doesn't exist, meaning that your voice is out there. There are multiple recordings everywhere. There's video cameras everywhere.
Phone calls.
You're from the UK, London. I think there's a camera on every building, every street
Yeah.
corner.
Making sure people have their TV
So
licenses.
you can't opt out, and your DNA follows you, right? If if you drink from a glass, tie it back to fingerprints. There's a whole bunch of things that's coming down the pike. You cannot opt out here, and go back to the Gattaca thing. Your ability to say, I'm going to opt out of the modifications that other people are doing. You may not be able to compete in society.
Do you think opting to not have a smartphone is a sort of a proxy for those sorts of opt-out scenarios that you're mapping? Like, it's not as extreme as if people all are modifying themselves to say have super jumping and running ability, but you don't have access to a lot of kind of business capabilities, project management stuff, tasks that people do every day to participate in the modern world if, say, you don't use a smartphone.
I think it's.
Right.
I think
You know.
having that phone is more of a Luddite reaction to what's happening here.
Yeah. You mean having like a flip phone today?
Yeah.
If people do that, it's becoming
Yeah,
more
or
common.
leave the house without a phone. I think it's a great exercise to go through just to train yourself not to be addicted to it. But you're going to have to learn to peacefully coexist with this technology going forward
Yeah.
and rationalize it for yourself. I think some of the tools about turning the color off and going black and white, Kieran and I had talked about that on our other show, to try to take control of this thing. Because you don't want the digital to take control of you. But I
Right.
think that just going to an analog phone or a flip, I get it. It makes sense.
It's a status symbol in Europe.
Is it?
The business elite. Yeah, I don't need all these features. I have people to do that for me. If you need to call me.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But I think it's a Luddite reaction. I just think it's a very powerful tool to have. Like I was just in Japan with my daughter,
Mhm.
and I used Google Maps to get around.
Yeah.
And TJ, you were in Asia, the same thing, right? If you're not familiar with where you're at, it's a fantastic tool.
Google Maps and Google Translate.
Yeah, and Google Translate,
Google
it was
Translate's
great.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But I also used the compass.
Hmm.
Because, you come out of one of these subway stations and you don't know which way's up. You
Right.
don't know which way's north. And, it says, oh, go here and walk north 2 blocks. Well, which way's north?
Right.
So I used the compass, and you're like, I could have pulled out an old school compass, but I just used the one on the phone. So it's a tremendous tool. I do think you can let it go overboard, but this notion of speech to face is just a mind-blowing thing.
You mentioned, I know we're going to do a deeper dive show on GANs, so generative adversarial networks, but we were just watching something before around how GAN neural nets can pull out higher quality outputs from poor quality input images or audio. So they were showing a picture of like a really
image restoration.
image restoration, and for audio too, like really poor quality inputs, and being able to get rid of the noise and pull out what the significant pattern is or whatever the focus point is. So for this podcast, hopefully we can use it to get rid of the wind, right? But imagine something that's much, much poorer quality. So applying that to speech to text, have you guys seen the movie Eagle Eye?
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf, kind of like a B-
Yeah.
movie way back in the day. It had some cool concepts around,
Right.
AGI.
That's a good description. of
Yeah,
that movie.
artificial general intelligence, right? There's a scene in that movie where it's this like omniscient, all-seeing AI that's in everything, anything like electronic, even the power lines. It's like it can listen to everything. So they're trying to like conspire against it, and they close the door in the room, turn off their phones, and they start having a conversation. the AI watches the vibrations of a water glass sitting on the table, and they can backwards engineer what the person, what I guess Shia LaBeouf is saying, based on the vibrations hitting the water from his voice in the room. And they can, Adobe came out with technology that can do that like a year or two ago, and it showed they can restore stuff at a distance using a laser based on what people are saying in the room, and it's only getting better. So you think like, oh, maybe we don't have CCTV everywhere in every corner, but you're not protected in your room. If there's a camera outside, you can see any surface that's reliable enough.
You can do way more with less. Way
more with less.
There's a technology called laser microphone.
Yeah.
That shoots a microphone at a window.
Isn't it? And it can work from like 500 yards away.
Yeah. Well, so you have a telescope or binoculars, and you see someone inside a room, and you want to eavesdrop. You don't have a bug. You hit the laser on the window, and the vibrations on the window from their voice is converted from the laser.
The levels of paranoia that this type of technology will bring.
And just the speed of its proliferation, I think, is what's terrifying, too. Because you can think back to, like, all the crime drama scenes you've seen where, you know, a couple characters think they're being listened to, or there's a wire, and they, like, turn on a faucet or a hair dryer to, okay, the FBI can't hear me now.
Drowning out will be a thing of the past.
Yeah.
So this is going to change forensics and police a lot.
Yeah.
But also think about, you know, we put this... There's a high degree of skepticism, and then there'll be a high, very rapid adoption of this, and then the ability to frame people changes the whole game here.
There's that, and I think I'm trying to figure out what is the response from a human behavioral standpoint. So will the end of privacy turn us into individuals who assume that everything we do is being recorded and watched from anyone who just has no nefarious intentions to the peeping Tom down the street? You operate your life in a way that you're exposed on a Times Square billboard, and it kind of changes the way that we
act. There's no privacy.
And it's something that's accepted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you're a criminal or something to hide like that, will people adapt in that way? And then that will change inherently the way that we interact with each other. If you assume that everything that you do, everything you're wearing, everything that you are is being projected on a billboard for everyone to see, if that's the assumption, you act very, very differently.
It's like the Black Mirror episode where that girl has a social rating. In some regards, it changes the way that people behave. So I'm sure it will have an impact on that. But for sure. The paranoia is going to be insane.
I think there'll be divides in the way people live. That episode's a good example, but if people watch Electric Dreams, there's the episode where, in a general sense, there's highly technological societies on each coast, and then sort of like bubble pop-up societies that reject a lot of the recent advancements throughout the heartland. And, you know, it's just one example, but I think, and it's an extreme example, but I think it's a good illustration of the types of reactions you'll see.
So you see like mega cities on the coast.
Well, yeah, I think you already see a lot of
areas.
polarization just because people who live in Brooklyn can communicate with people who live in Arkansas now in a way that it was never possible, and you're seeing a lot of polarization online because of that.
And then the only question is for those people who are rejecting it all in the heartland and like a rural area, at what point can they say no to things but still participate to that previous point, right?
And reap any of the benefits.
They still want internet. They still want phone access. There's microphones so they could talk to loved ones. Like there's going to be at some point where you're going to say no, but saying no to too much is you're not really part of the society at all anymore.
Right. You're going back to hunter-gatherer at some point if you keep saying no.
Yeah, it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's going to be an all-in-one choice.
Our social networks, our political institutions were organized around geography, commerce, culture, etc. The technology is now allowing those boundaries to be redrawn. So I think you're going to start to see social and political and economic groupings be defined through the adoption levels of technology, where you might see in one extreme Luddites, like the Amish, and people in that realm who reject a lot of this stuff and want to be old school, all the way up to people who want to, you know, put a port in their head and plug into the network right into their skull, and everything in between. And you'll start to see the old systems, like the neighborhoods you live in, the geography, the zip codes, the cultural realms, the old nation state. I think that you're going to start to see that break down, and we're already kind of seeing it through the balkanization of the United States, where there's nothing united about it. I mean, the coasts in the central part of are very different.
Yeah.
In terms of their value system, in terms of what they want, the way they live, what they value, everything. And, you know, I think new things are going to emerge. And I think the other thing we're going to see, and I go back to what this podcast is about on the speech-to-face and DNA-to-face, is we're going to very quickly come around to a point in the next year. And I think it's going to be between now and the 2020 election where people are not going to believe what they see. That the fakes are going to get so good, and it's going to get out there over the course of the next few months and the next year, as we head into the next election cycle. People aren't going to believe video, audio evidence, and things that are put in front of them. I think that's coming. And that therein spells a whole list of unintended consequences that I haven't even thought through.
There'll be so many creations you'll be able to choose the narrative that you want to believe. It's a post-truth world. It's just whatever version of the truth you want to believe, and you'll have content to support it that's could probably fool the best forensic experts out there.
And you could be manipulated to not believe certain things because it's a possibility that it's a deep fake or that it's manipulated. So, things get very...
I think 2020 is going to be such a fun campaign. It's going to be unbelievable.
Well, so you know, and again, we should probably also in the future do a show about this. But the government's starting to come out more with, and TJ, you and I were talking about this morning, disclosure more about UFOs, right? And it's moving out of the realm of, you know, conspiracy theory stuff on YouTube to now, you know, government officials are acknowledging that, there's stuff out there, and then it feels like they're just getting started on the reveal.
Well, the funny part about that discussion, and we're referring to the New York Times had a front page article last week. It's just getting an odd amount of attention. Yeah. But the thing is, I don't think if little green men stepped out on the street, I don't know if is this some kind of crazy Avatar CGI special effect? Like, would people would believe this stuff anymore if a high def video showed a UFO over the White House, like Independence Day style, right? That same shot. People would believe it. They'd make a meme out of it. They'd make a joke out of it. And they'd think, oh, it's just fancy CGI.
Well, I agree. I think in the last 6 months, the amount of times that we've been exposed to something, someone showing something, a clip of something in the group where we've just been like mind blown about what we're seeing. It's insane. It's a cliche, but when people say the market's moving really quickly, technology's moving fast, but like it's like crazy DNA to face. Like
we were here working yesterday, and Apple unveiled like the next generation of display technology, like at the developers conference.
And it already slipped out of my mind. Like on to the next thing.
When's 7K coming?
So it's crazy.
Well, I mean, when we were talking about that, and again, that's one of the other topics we'll do in one of the future shows is. We focus a lot on computer technology and AI and things like that recently, but material science and other areas are also moving. So in the Apple displays, they're using nanotechnology, and TJ was researching some stuff on graphene nanotubes, you know, where they're starting to bend them at the atomic level. It was like 1.1 degrees or something like that, and it changes the actual physical characteristics. And you start now when this UFO reveal comes out from the Air Force and the government, and you start to get into gravity mirrors and the ability to manipulate and warp gravity for instantaneous acceleration and well, I'm just telling you. I mean, you guys can go read about it. You can scoff at it. I'm just saying.
No, I'm not scoffing. I'm just processing.
I know, right?
I'm just taking it in.
If an alien ship over my shoulder landed and guys got out and started, I'd just say like, well, where have you been?
Be like, what did you? I'd be like, what did you get installed, Tom?
I'd be like, okay.
Do you guys know about GAN?
I would not be shocked 1%. But you know, whatever happens. So I at this point, I am open to all possibilities, because what I see when we study this stuff is just mind-blowing.
Yeah. Well, it's a tale of two cities, though. You're open to all possibilities, but, I mean, for me personally, my default belief system when anything's shown to me is I don't believe it. Yeah. I'm just eternal skeptic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a very odd place to be in, where you're like, well, anything's possible, but I also don't believe anything outright, and you can't convince me anyway.
Maybe you'll have to in this age of deep fakes that's coming fast.
Is it possible?
Yeah.
TJ, I'm the same way. I at the same time, it's a dualism. I believe nothing and everything, and you go through the exercise of believing what you see, and gameplay it out. Like, what if everything I'm seeing is true? What does that mean? And what if everything I'm seeing is fake is true? And what does it mean? And it's a lot of effort. You know, a lot of people, you know, like, you know, this whole issue on around the news, you know, the fake news has been a mantra that burned the last couple of years. People want to be spoon-fed.
Right.
They want the news to be able to tell them the truth, and they want to be able to trust it, but you can't. It's not true. I mean, they just recently had this issue where they said that the guy from North Korea killed some guy, and it was reported in the news, and and then the guy shows up at the next meeting.
Yeah.
It was just complete horseshit.
But this technology also, it's beyond public perception. What about legal proceedings? What about evidence in the courtroom?
Yeah.
You can be able to produce and fabricate whatever you want, but you can also, on the other side of the coin, there's always it's dualism here. You can say, well, how do we know that's true?
Right, which is what they do now with security footage in court cases.
Well,
I think
exactly.
the latter
decades.
point's more important though, because you have to prove beyond an unreasonable doubt, innocent until proven guilty. So it's not the other way around. So they'll be able to fabricate anything, but if people lose trust and they're aware that these things can be fabricated, how can we prove criminal intent? How can we prove anything?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you take this, you take the nonlinearity of what we're doing in genomics. You take the material science and things like the graphene and the carbon nanotubes. You take quantum computing, and you take all these things that are progressing at a nonlinear pace, and you start to combine them
Right.
in the future. Yeah. We're into all kinds of new worlds and new paradigms, and people just put their seatbelts on. And you know, one of the phrases I wrote for, you know, one of the things we're writing is the future. Don't explore at your own risk, meaning that, you know, the play on words is explore at your own risk. Obviously, I'd say don't explore at your own risk. If you don't just expose yourself to the things that are coming, you're going to be caught off guard. And in our consulting business, we want to help companies think through, you know, well, what happens if this thing happens? What's going to happen to your firm? What's your business model, your customer set, your markets that you go after? Everything's going to change, and you need to start thinking about it, not to bank on it happening, but to be ready for the possibility that when it does happen, you're ready to go.
I mean, it's too much at the fringe at once, though. I think there's a fear. Like I can feel myself becoming Alex Jones with all this stuff, or believing in transdimensional quantum AI vampires, and it's just
but
it's too much. It's too much too soon,
but
and it's so easy to reject.
It is, but it's also so complex. And when we visited the IBM Quantum Lab, the PhD guy called Luke, who gave us a really good presentation, he made a really good point, which is this stuff is really complicated, and so you need to get in as soon as you can and start to really build up that knowledge base, because the barrier to entry when this does hit is high. You can't just flick a switch and be like, cool, you know,
I'm interested in quantum computing
now I want to do it. It's like, no, it takes a long time to
foundational
keep up to date.
knowledge.
What took me away from that presentation, like they're doing work for the government. I mean,
yeah,
that's it. If you're worried about reliability of this stuff, and it's the stuff that they couldn't talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, don't explore at your own risk. We're trying to expose some cool things here to you. Speech to face, DNA to face is about as cool as it gets in terms of the wild technique. You just never figured that was the case. You would never figure that what you look like is embedded or encoded in any way in your speech or in your DNA, but it is. The DNA is more believable to me.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they're able to crack it, and here's the thing, they're not able to crack it through a derivative model by studying the actual DNA sequences. That is how we envisioned it when we decoded it. That has nothing to do with it. This is being done with neural networks, with deep learning.
Right.
And the deep learning is figuring it out, which we could never do.
It's all experiential and pattern recognition. So the more fuel, which would be data, the more fuel there is, the better these systems are trained to not just identify but produce reliable outputs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing we learn. You learn something, you just practice. These things can practice everything. And they don't forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's an exciting time. Again, we hope people find this interesting. That we're just starting to scratch the surface. You know, at one level, we're like, are we going to have any topics to discuss? And on the other hand, there's so many topics to discuss.
Yeah.
And you know, so we hope to come out with some cool shows coming up. We got some stuff in the pipeline that's gonna really shatter people's paradigms about what the future is going to hold.
Yep.
And we want people, again, through these podcast series, is to be exposed to it, not to become expert in it, but be familiar with it, so that they're able to think it through and game theory out what's going to be the impact to their lives, to their business, to their job, to their future.
Mm-hmm.
So, great.
Great.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Good stuff, guys.
See
See
you.
ya.
All right, bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Pardon the Disruption. We'd like you to subscribe to our podcast if you like it. You can find us on most of the platforms where you get your podcast from, whether that be iTunes or YouTube or whatever you're on. We also want some feedback. What shows do you want us to cover? What do you like? What do you not like? So that we can do this. We're doing this for you. We're not doing this for anything else. So please subscribe and give us some feedback. Thank you very much.